This is Anarcho Andre. Welcome to the second episode of Fictioneers Radio. We had a plan to start with a poetry reading by Jimitations, which I think we're going to continue to follow through with. But let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll go ahead and introduce everybody, and we'll let you guys know what all we're going to get into tonight. So, Jimmy, take it away.
You're going to have to wait on that. I'm sorry.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no.
Wow, okay. Anyway, so I guess we're not going to do that this time, but that's all right. We will have it prepared and ready for you guys as a bumper to intro the show next time we go through, so that way we don't have to worry about Jimmy, being flat-footed when the stakes are high and he needs to be here. We won't worry about him being flat-footed. But in the meantime, we have a great show. We're going to do another on the air. Reading of a piece of fiction, and we're going to go through and make our suggestions and take a look and see what all we can do with the piece. And we have a very, very, very special guest for you today, someone that I absolutely adore and somebody that I think is one of the reasons why the Fiction Workshop is as awesome as it is. Her name is Carol Kean. And I'm going to let Rhonda, actually, let's go ahead and just go across the table and introduce ourselves, something that we didn't do last time, which I'd like to do at the beginning of the show now instead of, halfway through, so you guys are aware of who all is talking. I'm Anarcho Andre, Honest Andy, however you want to call me, and let's just go down the list. So on to you, Jess.
Hi, I'm Jessica Hughes. And I'm J.R. Hughes on Steemit, and I'm really happy to be here. Take it away, Gmux.
Hello. I'm Gmux. I'm a moderator here on PALnet, and I'm a wannabe writer.
I guess Jason's train derailed.
Oh, no, I'm still
There he
here.
is.
I'm Jason Boo, and I'm a mini mod on the Grammar channel, and happy to be here as well.
And Jim.
Or his
Hey guys,
significant
I'm Jimmy, Jimitations, and very happy to be here. And Geek is in the other room, but she's also happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Pegasus Physics. I'm a writer and a mini mod in the Fiction Workshop and an aspiring voiceover artist. Next.
That would be me. I'm Rhonda K, and I'm mod in the Fiction Workshop and channel mod. We've got some interesting things planned for us tonight. I'm going to let Uniwisp introduce herself, and then we'll kind of tell you what we have going.
Thanks, Rhonda. I'm Uniwisp, and I'm also an aspiring writer. I do write poetry, but trying to get more into fiction, and excited for today's show.
Who isn't? Who isn't excited for another episode of Fictioneers Radio? Especially now that we have our spiffy layout all done and looking like super cool. Can't help that.
Yeah, it's awesome. We'll get there a little bit at a time. How was everybody's week? Did anything happen that we need to bring to the table here? What all went on?
Well, I am ready. Sorry, guys, we couldn't find it, but I am ready now. If you would like me to do this intro, I would gladly read the poem.
I would love it if you would do that. That would be just amazing.
Every writer in Steemit liked fiction a lot, and they don't like poets, because poets did not. But they needed a home for their verbs and their nouns, just an editing place where red inking abounds. Then Raccoon Rhonda K had a kinky idea, a wonderfully rad pin and inky idea. She'd start up a workshop, critiquing their friends, where the stories and glories and puns never end. And they say her steam power grew 3 times that day, then suggested a talk show should air right away. And the Fictioneers show, now on MSP Waves, is about to be one of your upvoted faves. They talk writing and world-building wangs, balls, and stuff. Their broadcasts are pantless, their jokes off the cuff. So join in for a mind-melding fiction critique, 10 to 12 UTC time on Tuesday each week. There's only one rule that they deign to enforce. No poems allowed, except for this one, of course.
Yay!
I think that was pretty good. I would
Awesome.
love to.
Yeah.
I would definitely love to use that.
Yes, I love it. I'm just smiling the whole time. Well, Carol has joined us. Carol, can you test your mic really quickly? Make sure we have you. I guess not. Okay. All right. So how was everybody's week? What happened? Did anything exciting happen to anyone?
I had a lot of fun gigs. I got to do my own radio show. That was kind of cool.
Hell yeah, that's awesome, man. Tell us about it.
It went pretty well. I mean, we did have our share of oopses and wrong buttons, and just like today, we're still cruising around trying to figure out where everything is. And so, but yeah, it went off without a hitch. And this week, I'm going to talk all space stuff, all Star Wars, and my own serial Starship Winkler, I'm sorry, or as G-Mux likes to call it, Starship Winkles, I think he called it.
Starship Wankler.
That's more like it. Yeah, so I had a good week.
Awesome.
I got to
Glad hear it.
entertain.
Well, our show tonight.
What about
Is
our show
going-
tonight?
I need an extra hand. I'm short a hand. We're going to be discussing, hopefully, if we can get everything together, we're going to be discussing controversy in publishing. We had a story. Yeah, we had a story come through the workshop by Zhaji Bai, and it's really good. It's a really good story. And she includes a very, very controversial phobic type of action, which, a lot of guys can understand. I mean, but, it's something that we feel that, you go into a mainstream publishing market and you put something like this out there, you're going to get some pushback because they're not going to want to offend certain people. And that's the whole point of the story. So the whole point that her story is making is the very thing that would keep it possibly from out of the publishing industry. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that Zhaji and us, we are not phobic. We don't share the views that her character has. The story was written for the point of showing that, of how it could be taken, and then how the overreaction of society then can get out of hand. So anyway, that's what we have, and I'm really excited to read. It's a good story. We're also going to critique it technically as well.
That's fantastic. I'm actually really curious to hear about it or have it read, because I have been, as I am wont to do these last few days, I have been horribly busy, so I've been very, very neglectful of my duties to the Fiction Workshop, and I apologize for that. So I'm very much looking forward to this. Anything that's controversial with regards to, how people believe and how people perceive the world is always interesting to me and always gets me interested in the content of the story. So.
Well, we also had a last-minute thing set up where author Nick Cole was going to join us, but we haven't heard from him all day. So I don't really know what happened. Nick Cole had a contract with a top 5 publisher to publish one of his novels called Control Alt Revolt. And he's a bit of a, he's a science fiction writer. He writes, gamer stuff, but he's also included a conservative hot button in that book. And he didn't really, and it was not even a major plot point, and he wasn't even selling the concept, but he was told to either edit that out and rewrite the whole thing, so that it didn't include that, or, that was the only choice he was given. And he made himself an alternate choice and self-published with quite a bit of success. So we wanted to have him on tonight, and we may get him on in the future. He's very, I don't know what happened to him today, but we will try to get him on here to discuss that in the future. But what his personal story as an author ties directly into what we're going to be discussing tonight. So
yeah, and I think when I read his account of what had happened, I think what struck me was that he was like immediately pulled from release date, like even before he was asked, would you be willing to write this out? They just immediately quashed any idea of releasing the book, even though he had had a successful contract with them previously and completed it, which I thought was sort of outrageous.
yeah, it was. So, just I just regret that he can't. But we're gonna have to figure out how to get Carol. She's showing as being with us, but we're not able to communicate with her.
Yeah, well, we have a little bit of time to figure that out. So hopefully we can get that sorted. But in the meantime, I just wanted to pitch in and say, yeah, that sounds incredibly strange that they would have a contract with this author, and then because the particular piece that he wants to write is, not acceptable to their sensibilities or to their readership, they're like, oh, well, see ya later, bye.
Well, I believe what it was he had a contract with them for a certain number of books. He had completed that contract and was not in a new contract yet.
Oh, okay,
but
okay, I understand.
they went ahead and said, hey, yeah, give us another book. And he gave them that book. And then they said, oh, never mind, and pulled him from release. Like he was just immediately
So he completed he completed the book. The project was completely finished. And he delivered it as per request by the publisher.
Right. Yes. And they had had some discussion, I guess, of what it would be. And it was supposed to be sort of a prequel to the series they had published previously. And, it was just a small part of the inciting incident was offensive to the editor and the publisher. And yeah, they just went, I mean, what got me was that they went ahead and pulled an already established release plan without even talking to him first about it. It was just like, you're out of here.
That's insane. That is, I mean, surely there's some grounds for breach of contract. Well, I mean, technically he wasn't, was he under contract at that point?
Right. And he wasn't under contract at that time, from what I can see, and he wound up releasing it independently, which is fantastic. And I know that you and I, Andre, probably would agree here. I mean, yes, of course, if there was no contract in place, the publisher, has every right to say, well, we don't want to publish this. But
it's
the
still
way
it's poor policy is what it is. It's poor business practice.
Yes, absolutely.
If me as an author, I would not want to do business with those people, because I would not be interested in working or publishing through an organization that feels that they can request a book from me, I can complete it, we can be ready to launch the book, and then they read through the finished product and they're like, yeah, we don't want to do this.
Right.
Okay,
yes.
so I literally just spent all that effort for what reason exactly? So now
well,
it's
luckily,
all on me.
Well, luckily, he spent all of that money to have an excellent independent release. And, I think that that's such an important thing that that there is that additional venue for artists in any kind of media. These days, the internet has made that possible. And that's just fantastic. That's a way to do it without, having to bring a lot of, they've got the right to do it, but luckily he also has the right to go and have a great audience. I mean, I'm sure they would say, they said, I think I read in his thing that, well, he would lose 50% of his audience, and he sure proved them wrong.
Yeah, no kidding. There's few things like drumming up interest and controversy surrounding the project before its release.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the takeaway, is that it ultimately, I think, worked in his favor. And I did find some things. I wasn't going to read them because I thought he would be here and he could still show up, I suppose. But there were some things that he did say, on his blog about that I would read. But right now, let's have Jimmy go ahead with the Jaji story, if you've got it pulled up there. It's called Terms of Service, and we do have some things to say about this piece, and just want to make sure that everybody knows that we chose it because it's controversial.
Sweet. That's my bread and butter, baby. Let's do it.
And also
Nice.
because she is one heck of a writer and we love her. So there we go.
It's if I'm looking at the right one, it starts off with it's about a toothbrush, right? It's terms of service. Okay, here we go. Kai looked at the toothbrush as if it were some sort of alien artifact excavated from a long-lost civilization. It wasn't immediately obvious, but the toothbrush looked right back at him. Tiny sensors along the handle registered his fingerprints, and a micro lens on the neck scanned his face. Without any doubt, this user was not allowed. The toothbrush powered down and went back to sleep. Kai clicked the switch up and down a few times experimentally. The wretched thing vibrated a little, then promptly switched off, but it worked last night. He remembered brushing his teeth with some fondness. He just switched brushing heads and reprogrammed the handle to squirt mouthwash whilst it rolled his plaque away. Now, nothing. He sighed and decided to try again later. He inched a short ribbon of toothpaste onto his finger and mimicked brushing his teeth. A quick gargle, and he patted his face dry. What's next? Shave or shower? He rubbed his stomach absently. There was one other S that he forgot. His tummy gave a slow belly roll. Yep, maybe if he sat on the toilet a little, he could shake loose a butt log. The toilet blinked red at him and refused to open its lid. What the? Kai grabbed the Comfort 2000 toilet seat with both hands and lifted with all his strength. The seat remained securely closed. Sensors along the rim scanned for approved users. Kai's fingerprints didn't match. The toilet safety LED lights on either side of the lid blinked red. It appeared as if the toilet was glaring at him. He glared back angrily, his stomach quivering as it filled with the tiniest fluttery butterflies imaginable. Might be okay if he didn't eat. If he did, he'd need to lay some major pipe. Fine, he said, pointing at the toilet. Have it your way. But that's the last time I'm having any nice toilet bowl cleaner for you then. I'm never going to clean you again, ever. The toilet blinked its lights off, as if it ever cared for a toilet bowl cleaner. Kai decided to just forget everything. He couldn't brush his teeth, couldn't poop, and taking a shower was out of the question. He decided to cook some eggs. Hang on, what's this? The stove lights remained off. He toggled the electric switches. Nothing. The stove remained resolutely off. He looked at the malfunctioning appliance with some concern. If he couldn't cook, ergo he couldn't eat. Absently, he scratched his head with the copper-coated skillet he'd taken out of the cabinet. Ergo, he probably should buy something from the deli down the street. His stomach gave a gentle flip-flop. It too was concerned, as it often was, needing to empty and refill at the same time. Something was up with his apartment. Kai pulled his pants on, laced up his shoes. He was down to his last pair of socks, and his t-shirt felt a little greasy. After the deli, he would go to the automated laundry across the road. The apartment door opened without the usual clatter of electronic bolts. So very odd. He swung it closed behind him. It should have locked automatically. It didn't. He pulled it toward him, pushed it back. The door swung open just a little, refusing to close. Damn it! Not you too! Close, you stupid door! Close! Kai scrambled in his pocket for the key card he never used. The door's proximity sensor always recognized him and opened and closed quite considerately. Not today. Today, the door malfunctioned like everything else in his home. This time, Kai wasn't having it. I told you to close, you feckin' idiot. Close or I'll kick your ass in. He slammed the door with all his might. This time, it didn't swing back. It remained securely in its frame, like a good door should. There. That's how you do it. Mind you, listen to me next time, door. Satisfied, Kai took the stairs down, 2 at a time. Behind him, the door breathed a sigh of relief. It didn't recognize Kai either. As programmed, it opened slightly, just enough for anyone passing to know it was unlocked. Then it powered down. Beatrice felt tired this morning. Working the deli counter made her cranky. All that fried food, and she couldn't eat it. Not unless she wanted her acid reflux to act up. And then this tall, skinny man came in wanting a sandwich. She hated making sandwiches more than anything else in the world. Honestly, who invented sandwiches? God, she hated people who ate sandwiches almost as much as she hated making them. What's wrong with a nice bun or a cup of soup? But no, everybody wanted them a sandwich. Bloody, uncivilized barbarians is what they was. Can I have some roasted turkey on garlic bread this morning, madam? Kai gave her his best good morning sunshine face. Her sour look dimmed his smile just a little. No, you can't have a sandwich. How about a donut instead? The thought of slathering mayonnaise on toasted bread made her cringe. The horror. No, thank you, madam. Kai tried smiling again. I would like bread, just bread, with some meat inside it. Turkey, I believe, and thank you. Beatrice tried to smile, but her lips wouldn't cooperate. Instead, she managed to show Kai her coffee-stained teeth in a painful grimace. Fine, I'll make you a sandwich. Here, just give me your credit card so I can set your order up. Gladly, my lady. Beatrice swiped the card through the reader. It beeped loudly. Honey, this card any good? The machine says unauthorized. Madam, that is a working credit card. Just yesterday, I bought a new toothbrush. Today, it says unauthorized, honey. I can't take your money because the machine says you don't have any. The card reader beeped loudly as if agreeing. So what will I eat then? Kai's eyes were wide open. He felt quite confused. Something fishy was going on. Very fishy. Do you have any real money? Beatrice headed back for her comfortable chair behind the register. Money? Who has money anymore? I sure as hell don't. Then you don't eat, honey. Not here, at least. Beatrice felt relief spread through her like an ice-cool breeze on a hot, sweaty day. One less barbarian served. She sat down with genuine pleasure. Come back when you can pay, honey. Until then, have a nice day. She grimaced one last time. Kai walked out of B's Deli with a dazed look on his face. It was only 8 a.m., and so far he hadn't brushed his teeth or pooped. His clothes felt tacky, and he was hungry. What's going on? He had no money, his credit card seized up, and then that sinking feeling in his stomach was ominous. If he didn't find a bathroom, and soon, the gophering would begin, and that would be a crappy end to his morning. Spare some change, buddy? A dreadfully dirty hobo sidled up beside him. He smelled of an exotic combination of street sweat and horrible breath.
Okay, now it's...
Oh, come now. Not you too, Kai stamped off angrily. This was the last straw. He needed answers. Maybe he could start with the bank. What's the matter, friend? Got no money? The bum pursued him, limping to catch up. Kai noticed the hobo's beat-up sneakers were worn out, held together by bits of tape and wire. One particularly dirty toe protruded from the hole in the left runner. He turned on the hapless hobo. Yes, I don't have any money. I don't have any food. My toothbrush won't work. And on top of it all, I have to poop. So why don't you just leave me alone, huh? The bum's wheedling face paused. His smarmy smile faded, replaced with a serious look. Toothbrush, eh? Card stopped working too? I'll bet your front door can't even be bothered to close itself. Am I right? Kai felt decidedly strange, almost as if he discovered he was a twin and this disgusting creature was his long-lost brother. What? Well, how did you know that? He rounded on the bum. Well, have you been following me? You have, haven't you? Ha! Follow you? I got other things to do than worry about following you. So you're the latest victim, huh? He grinned, revealing a mouthful of abandoned teeth, browning and leaning in every direction. Soon you'll be following me. Trust me. You'll need me to show you the ropes. What ropes? Trust you? Are you barking mad? You must be to wear shoes with your toes poking out. What the fuck was going on? Seriously. The bum grabbed Kai's arm. What did you do? What did you say? Think. You must have done something, said something to piss them off. Kai's skin crawled. The bum was too close. Up in his Kool-Aid, so to speak. I didn't do anything. What had happened last night? He remembered going to a bar, the seedy one next to the bowling alley on Doyle, the Pink Flamingo. 5 pile drivers in and a tall woman with a square jaw gave him a come hither. They danced, didn't they? Kai remembered her arms, strong and muscular. She held him in a clinch on the dance floor. He remembered grabbing her ass, and she laughed, low and throaty, then grabbed his, lifting him off the floor, didn't she? If you didn't do nothing, then you must have said something, brother. The bum held his other arm. You remember, right? The tall woman's hand slipped into his pants. She was forward, too forward. Kai tried to return the favor and discovered, under her soft underwear, and to his eternal dismay, a well-proportioned member, much larger than his, throbbing gently in his disbelieving palm. He pulled his hand out as if he'd been shocked, as if he'd gone shopping for a nice little bird, and when he opened the bag, he found a huge anaconda, a giant, wet anaconda. Kai held onto the bum's arms. I got into a shouting match in a bar. A transgender woman grabbed my stuff. That's not going to get you into trouble with the PC police, son. The bum looked suddenly sympathetic. What else happened? Long story. We were dancing. He put his hand in my pants. When I realized it was a man, I tried to get away, but he was holding me. Go on, tell me everything. So I told him to let go or else. You threatened him? Well, what else could I do? I'm not accustomed to attractive men holding onto my junk. It's not like it happens every day. Did you tell him anything? Anything at all about being transgender? Only that I'm not attracted to men. Good God, not that. The bum shook Kai. Tell me, you didn't tell him he was a man, but he was a man. He had a stiffy and everything. Bigger than mine, too, come to think about it. God, you're a fool. Did anyone hear? Who heard you say that? Well, we were dancing in a group. I mean, he had friends. Actually, the entire bar might have heard. I didn't like his hand in my pants. I might have told him to fuck off. And someone must have reported it. By now, your face is all over social media, friend. The bum looked genuinely concerned. Your face has been recognized and reblogged on every shit site on the planet. Didn't anybody tell you it's against the law to be transphobic? So what? A man had his hand down my pants. I didn't like it. I asked him to stop. Why is so much shit happening to me? Same thing happened to me, friend. The bum wrapped his arm around Kai. He didn't notice. I worked construction in my old life before I said something the PC police didn't like. So they reported me. Said it was hate speech. Then, one by one, every company I interacted with pulled their products. Said I'd violated their terms of service. Kai's stomach contracted sharply. I don't get it. So someone accused you of hate speech. Why isn't my stove working? Or my toothbrush? I don't get it. Tears started in Kai's eyes. I don't understand. What did I do wrong? Nothing, son. You don't have to do a damn thing these days. The bum's old face was sympathetic. Once you violate a company's TOS, they are within their rights to pull their services. Most of them put a clause denouncing hate speech. None of them want to be slapped with negative publicity for allowing it. You're fucked. No one really understands how much we depend on companies for everything, only when it stops. Kai looked at the bum long and hard. They stopped everything? My entire life? Can they do that? That's how they get you, son. The bum shook his head. When everyone is too scared to say anything, and that's how they control you. That's why everybody is smiling and watching the world burn. Ain't nothing working right now, and no one's going to say it, because nobody wants to be where you are right now. And, well, where's that? Outside, son, just outside, lost to the world they built. They come looking for you soon enough. Men with shiny badges and shock sticks. Maybe some of them are in your house right now. What can I do? Kai felt his heart trip hammer in his chest. His stomach did a lazy belly flop. Right now ain't nothing you can do. Try to stay free. When they incarcerate you, then that's when you get your ass fucked. You'll be happy to have transgender fella keeping you company. There's some big dudes inside, and you don't want to run contrary to them. A sharp sound of a police siren split the air with a piercing wail. Both men jumped. Come on, son. Let's get you out of sight. Big Brother's watching everything you do or say. It'll be better tomorrow. Kai looked back at his old world. I can't believe this. The old bum laughed until he started coughing. Phlegm rattled in his chest. His busted up shoes flapping on the concrete. Think on it another way, son. Right now you're free. You ain't never been free before. They don't want you? He spat backwards in the direction they came. Man like you can do a lot of things in the time he has left. What do you want to do with the rest of your life? Kai hadn't a clue.
That was a hell of a story. Hot damn.
So I think
Very nice reading.
Yeah, thank you for reading that, Jimmy. That came through the workshop, and I recognized right away that it was significant. And I did mention in the critique that she may get some blowback from that if she publishes that, because people are going to basically have the same reaction. Some people may have the same reaction that some of the authorities did in that fictional world. And, I don't line up with the stance that Kai took in the story. However, I also think that that the story has a right to be told or to be shared. So anyway, That's why we brought it here, and I'd love to hear some of us discuss that.
All right. Well, I am totally fair game. Well, for starters, number one, I happen to be of the mind that everything the way that the authorities are set up, like you said, I think it's controversial that we would be in a position ever where your personal preferences are grounds for you being, essentially made into like a non-person. Although, to be fair, as an anarcho-capitalist, I have no problem with companies voluntarily, withdrawing their support for people that they don't agree with. The same way I don't have any problem with individuals excluding other people that they don't want to associate with. At the same time, like, hot damn, that is rough. But please,
I agree.
But please, somebody else chime in as well.
I just agree with Anarcho Andrei, so I'm just nodding. Yeah.
I agree with Anarcho Andrei as well. I think it's I think it's Orwellian in its look ahead here, and Big Brother is turning out not to be oppressive, but exactly the opposite. So PC correct that it's not turning anybody into the same mindless zombie, but it seems to be turning everybody into forced to being controlled.
Well, see, that's the thing. Oppression isn't necessarily that you're excluding people. Hyper-inclusivity can be as oppressive to other groups of people. So whereas before, 50, 100 years ago, you had, legal codified discrimination against certain racial groups. Now you have, it's coming to the point now, and I know it is in Canada, like hate speech is outlawed in Canada, and hate speech, I don't know if you guys, I don't know how many of our listeners or how many of you guys here, but I'm pretty sure we're all relatively familiar with it. Hate speech is a nebulous term. It's whatever really they want it to be. So there's no set definition, and that's kind of the point to having hate speech as a term that can be outlawed and can be acted upon by the police. So it becomes less, okay, well, we're going to discriminate against you. We're going to put you in jail because of the color of your skin or because of, certain acts that you engage in. Now it's, we're going to put you in jail because you believe a certain way, which is
absolutely
even more terrifying. Honestly, that's even more terrifying.
Well,
I
sure,
agree.
because it's a thought crime, and there's no
Jez,
real
I think
way
you may
of,
still be muted.
No, I can hear.
I don't think so. It's registering.
Okay, it looks like you're trying to talk and nothing's coming.
Oh, I'm hearing her.
Jessica
Yeah.
Hughes.
Yeah, I can hear.
Hello. Okay. Sorry. Well, I mean, what I'm saying is that it seems that, a thought crime is not just nebulous, but it's impossible to
glitches.
prove. You can only present, these outside things like, what did this person talk about? Who do they, what do they watch? What clubs do they belong to? Who do they talk to? Even an absence of things could be seen as evidence of a crime. Like, do they not have a diverse enough, set of friends, what have you? And really, when you have something like a hate crime, it is absolutely punishing someone for thought, even if they are a hateful person, but to say, well, I murdered this person, and now I'm going to be extra punished because of the kind of hate I displayed. I mean, it just seems nonsensical to me. Murder is murder. It's all a hate crime.
And here's my other issue with it, because specifically about hate speech. But I agree with your assertion about tacking on hate as an aggravation to previous crimes. But specifically about hate speech. So essentially what you do when you create a statute outlawing or prohibiting hate speech, as we all know, any law or legal statute that is in the books is enforceable by violence. That's really what it comes down to. Government is one thing specifically. It's somebody holding a gun. I mean,
Right.
you can go down the line and you can say, oh, well, there's all these sanctions, yada, yada, whatever. At the end of the line, the ultimate tool that the government has, the ultimate recourse that the state has against you, is a gun in your face, and that is truth. That is 100% true. You can ask anybody, any political scientist, they'll tell you the same thing. They might not want to admit it, but it is true. The government enforces rules by violence. That's what it does. But that being said, what hate speech laws do is essentially say, okay, your speech is so offensive that it has the same quality as actual physical violence.
Right.
So in other words, it's transforming speech, which is not violence. I mean, don't get me wrong. You can say things that are hurtful and make people feel absolutely terrible. Like, it does have an effect on people, but it is not physical violence. It's not aggression. It doesn't trespass on anything. So what it does is it translates speech from that category where it's not a trespass and allows retribution in the form of physical violence, of actual trespass, in retaliation to speech. It's no different than saying, okay, well, if you say this certain thing, me and my friends are going to come over to your house and bash your skull in.
Right.
It's no different. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. And
effectively, it's not really helpful to the ends of people who support, hate speech laws, because, I mean, really, would you rather them all be hiding and plotting and getting more angry? And see, I would rather know who the idiots are and know to avoid them and not associate with them. Let them say it loud and proud so I can go somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It drives people underground. Go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
I'm not as concerned with the with the people on that end. I'm more concerned with who's deciding what is hate speech and what is not. That's the terrifying thing to me, is that somebody has decided what I think is normal is punishable by violence.
Yeah, absolutely. Nonviolent acts should not be punishable by violence at all.
Well, just I mean, who made up these rules of what is and what is not hate speech? I mean, it's pretty. It's like that famous quote about pornography. Well, I know it when I see it. That's all I know. How do you can tell what's pornography? Well, I know it when I see it. So do I just should know hate speech when I hear it? Because what's hate speech to me, I'm just like, whoa, that's not. That wasn't hate speech. I mean, I was just stating an opinion. That was, just because I said I didn't agree with the president's view on something doesn't make me a racist, but that can be labeled as hate speech.
Yes, you are, Jim. You are a virulent, flaming racist.
I'm anti everything.
Yeah, well, that's G-Mux who's against everything.
Yep. Hands up, that's me.
You would be.
The thing about it is that when we start to get into publishing, and I'm not sure where Nick went, he just suddenly disappeared out of the queue.
Yeah, but, I was really excited for having him here, but all right.
It was all our hate speech.
It must have been. But anyway, go on, Rhonda. I'm sorry.
What happens is that we then get into the deal with publishing when publishers are censoring or the things that we say as writers. And publishers do have the right to do that. Like if I do a publishing house and someone comes to me with hate speech, with really, real hate speech, I'm not going to publish that. I don't want that on my imprint. But the other aspect of it is where do you draw that line? Where do you say, we can publish this or can't publish that? And I was real pleased with what, I guess the point that I want to make about Nick Cole is that he went ahead and self-published his book and he reaped some benefits from this whole situation. So if the publisher shuts you down, what recourses do you have?
Right, and that's the flip side of the coin, because I don't, on the one hand, I don't think that you should be, violently held responsible for words, but on the other side of that, you should be able to, and you have an a priori right to exclude exclude others from associating with you. So, I mean, a publisher is well within their rights to not publish something that they feel is inflammatory or is not in their interest or even is of the wrong political stance, because they are, at the end of the day, a private organization. But there again, I mean, Nick published for himself, so I like that we live in an era and we have the technology and tools and resources to, if we have something that we want people to read, that we think would benefit people to read, that we can get it out to people and they can read it. We don't have to go through an intermediary.
Right. Yeah, agreed.
Or you can go through us. That would be perfectly fine. You can totally go through the Fiction Workshop and we'll be happy to help.
Woo!
Yeah. Yeah. So Jazi's story that she wrote deals with the very thing, and the irony of it is that it deals with the very type of bias that would keep that story from some publishing options. So that's fascinating to me. It's like if you stand in a room and there are two mirrors facing each other and you look in the mirror and it's just this endless hallway of the same reflection. That's what you sort of feel like when you get into that. It's a situation of, she writes about the issue that's going to keep her story from, attaining the success that it, and I'm not saying it's not going to reach any, that's not my point. I'm just saying that it is controversial for the same reason that the story itself illustrates.
It's like ironyception.
Yeah, it is. We ran this story through the workshop, and there were some things that came up. There were lots of suggestions made on it. The problem that I had with the story is that there was some head hopping in there, and we did a story last week that didn't have any of that, and I mentioned it and we talked about it. But I'm going to back up just a little bit and just give you an example of what I mean. It's going to take me a minute to get. Jess, I don't know what glass you're breaking, honey, but we can hear it. Oh
my goodness.
I'm going
like the world's most sensitive microphone. I'm sorry.
So, but anyway, I'm going to try to get a passage or two of that story, and I'm going to represent it and tell you what, tell you what I thought about that. So somebody else take the floor for a minute while I'm doing that.
Okay.
I just actually want to check in, make sure we can hear Carol because she's unmuted again.
Yeah, actually, yeah, this would be a perfect opportunity to do that. Carol, can you hear us? Carol.
She was definitely working before.
Out there?
Does anyone know what a rhino sounds like? Do a rhino call.
She isn't muted, so I don't understand why.
What on earth? Jesus. You guys are weird. I love you guys.
Hello.
Yay!
Hear me?
We can. Yes, we can. We certainly can.
From Uniwisp, she said check and see if streaming mode is turned on and in settings, and it wasn't. I don't know why. See, when Miranda and I did a test drive, we were in private channel, which apparently is not the same as being in streaming mode with live radio. So here I am.
Well, apparently not, but you're coming in just fine. So, hi.
Hey.
Hello.
Good to hear from you. I did hear the reading of, I guess it's Jagi is how you say her name. Jagi's story.
Jaji.
Okay. Okay. So, and then I missed about the last 2 minutes that you said, but and I heard most of the discussion. And Nick vanished. He hasn't come back yet. Nick Cole.
Apparently he hasn't come back yet.
I said hi to him. He disappeared, so it might be my fault.
Oh no! Don't say hi to him again. Gee. Yeah. So Control Alt Revolt. It made quite the stir because here's a guy published with Harper Voyager, Soda Pop Soldier. Popular book, selling well. They asked him for the prequel, and he needed a reason for this AI to come up with the idea that I need to destroy humanity. And his editor did not like the reason he came up with. And, well, we already discussed this. So when Nick went his separate way, he had a fallback plan. He had social media platforms which is what this is.
That's exactly what this is.
That's exactly right. And you know, he's won some award or something, hasn't he, Carol?
Dragon. He has the Dragon Award, and I believe it was for the indie book, the Control Alt Revolt, the one he self-published.
Right. So he
Oh,
definitely.
I'm awful wrong. He got the Dragon Award anyway.
Well, he's done a great thing there and really paved the way for some people. I have this terms of service open, and we read along. And we get to the part where he goes into the restaurant, and we have the waitress feeling tired, and we get inside her head, and she's working behind the deli counter made her crazy. All that fried food, and she couldn't eat it. And then this tall, skinny man comes in. She hates making the sandwiches. Then the very next paragraph, we have Kai. Can I have some roasted turkey on garlic bread this morning, madam? Kai gave her his best good morning sunshine face. If we've changed point of view, because we open the story in Kai's point of view.
Right.
And now all of a sudden we were in the waitress's point of view, which actually is fine because there's a scene break. She's got 3 little asterisks, and so that's fine. We know that we're shifting, we know something's changing, so we go from Kai's point of view to hers. Not a problem. But then in that scene, we jump right back into Kai's head again. Now, this is something that most writers, when they first start writing, don't think about is the perspective. And there is a technique called omniscient point of view, where you do know what each character is thinking, and you do know things that none of the characters can know, and the narrator communicates this. However, that voice, that narrative voice in omniscient third, is a different and distinct voice from the characters. The narrator is actually almost a character of their own, and they have a very distinct voice. If you're just writing from head to head to head, and you're things that may happen in the future and things like that, then you're head hopping, and that is pretty much verboten in contemporary publishing. Many times, if an agent gets a manuscript on their desk and they see that, they don't read further. That's enough to make them flush the whole manuscript. So you do have some disparity with that. You have some people with some different opinions. And you have a lot of mainstream published authors who are doing well and selling a lot of books who head hop regularly. Guess what, though? Published authors, if they're bringing their publisher in a whole lot of bank, they can pretty much write the phone book and put their name on it, and the publisher's going to sell it. So, you know,
they can do whatever they want.
They can write their own ticket, and you don't base your writing style on what a contemporary author is getting away with, because you get in trouble like that because you don't have the influence that they have. So our goal is to try to make our personal writing and our personal style. We need to give, if we're wanting to do mainstream publishing, we need to give the agents and the publishers as few reasons to slush pile our stuff as possible. The other aspect of that is it is hard on your reader. If you have a reader reading along and they're hopping from head to head, they don't know which character to care about. They don't know who to invest in. You know, they're just kind of hopping, and some readers don't notice it. Some readers notice it, but they don't know what they're noticing, and they just may put your book down because it's too confusing.
One thing I want to mention about this specifically, because when I started writing in omniscient third person, except I didn't do it with the narrator as a separate voice, which is my mistake because, you know, I'm a neonate. I am not a professional author. I kind of just piddled around for the longest time. But that was something like the head hopping that happened in this story. That was something that I did and have done before, and I just want to point that out because it's something that those of us, you know, when we first learn to write, like whatever fiction, you know, background that we have when we first get started, usually it's, you know, doing some creative writing exercises in school, right? And usually they don't really focus, like you get a real brief instruction on like point of view and what that means, and you generally understand, well, okay, first person is first person and third person is third person. That's about as far as it goes. So that is a mistake that I've made, and I've noticed other people make without realizing it when you first get started or when you really start getting serious. So I'm glad that you brought attention to it, because that's something that like a large number of us, myself included, could definitely work on.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. It is one of the most common things that you see. And it's also, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, um, I don't think it was we weren't communicating. We didn't have the internet and the social media and the ways to communicate. So that, it was not as, I don't want to say it wasn't as big a deal, but there wasn't as much attention brought to it. Nowadays, anytime you go into a workshop or a forum or anywhere where there are published and experienced authors, they're going to comment on that. And there are going to be some varying opinions, but it is something very widely discussed now. So it's not just us. It's not just, it's not just
instant feedback. Instant
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah, so it's something, and people who are not exposed to that environment, it is going to be new and surprising. But that's what we're here for. That's exactly why the Fiction Workshop exists. It's not to tell people, "Oh, you head hopped, so you're a crappy writer." That's not true.
Well, Gmux might do that.
Oh,
That's how I do.
Why do I keep getting the blame for everything?
Because Shane's not here.
That's right.
This is a good point. Yes.
Rhonda, I was actually thinking about that. I probably listen to between 5 and 7 books a week. God bless Audible. And I listen to a lot of debut novels because I feel like people try really hard the first time around. And I cannot remember the last time I listened to an omniscient narrator. I really can't think of one. There's a lot of limited that comes from multiple viewpoints throughout the book during scene changes and such, but I really can't think of the last time I read a contemporary novel that was told from an omniscient perspective.
That's right. And that's the reason for that. Now, you will still see some newer novels that are told, like I read one by John Grisham recently that sent me, I needed therapy after I read it. But anyway, it was it head hopped relentlessly, and it's John Grisham. He can do whatever he wants. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it readable. The reviews, when you look at the reviews on that particular book, he got scalded. He got his fanny smacked over that one. So, I don't know if he cares as long as he gets paid, but just, the readers do notice is the point that I'm making. Readers will notice. And we can't afford as new authors for them to be noticing that type of thing about our stuff. We don't have the backing that he does and all that. So, but anyway, that's true. You don't see, and it's because the internet, the word processors, it's also easy to self-edit now. When the classic authors were writing, they were writing things by hand, and they would have to redraft and even typewriters and typesetting. You couldn't just change one word on a page. You had to retype the whole page. Editing was very difficult. Now it's gotten very easy to self-edit. You just backspace and type and then print. And if that doesn't work, you backspace, type again, and print again. And so the standards have gotten a lot stricter, in the publishing community on some things. And that is one of them, is they really want to see clean, clear POV breaks, scene breaks between the POV changes.
All right.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of new stuff will actually give you a name. This is Sarah. This is chapter 6, Joan, at the beginning of it. So we know who we're listening to.
All right. So now that we've identified the issue, what would be probably the best way to, I don't know, kind of like rework it? And I don't expect that we're going to have like extremely specific line-by-line suggestions, but maybe a different perspective on how to approach that particular scene.
I do, actually.
Of course you do. That's why I phrased it.
The idea of point of view, and particularly when you get into deep point of view, where you get rid of the filters like he thought or she noticed or those sorts of things. If I see somebody write, she thought to herself one more time, I'm going to have smoke come out my ear. But anyway, it's a matter of anything that point you have your scene, and you may have multiple characters in the scene. You pick the character who's going to show that scene to us best through their eyes. We need to stick with the character who can give us the best perspective of that scene. The other way to do that is, this is why we recommend people work with short fiction, because it's really hard to do this with a novel length work until you've gotten good at it. You practice on the short stuff first. So, you have maybe a 500-word thing that you've written. Rewrite it in first person. Now, I'm not saying you need to publish it in first person, but if you really want to get the third person limited down pat, you write it as a practice run in first person, and boy, it'll really start jumping out at you then. Because just like this one, if the restaurant scene had been written, the waitress comes in and she's tired and all that, and she's like, I'm tired, I've been working and I hate making sandwiches. And then this man comes to the counter, this tall, thin man, and he says he wants a sandwich, and he is, I forget what the exact action was, but he is fighting a smile or forcing a smile. You'll see right then that the eye perspective, the first person perspective, could never know what was going on inside his head. So that's the thing I always run it past, is if this can be successfully written in first person, then it's fine in third person limited. But if I'm trying to, as a test, run it through the first person, little obstacle course there, and it doesn't pass in first person, then it's not third person limited. It's omniscient.
Yeah, and this is not easy, by the way, for everybody listening. This is not easy. Like I mentioned before, I write in third person omniscient. That's what I grew up writing, and I have a novel written in that particular case, and I will admit it head hops a lot. It does. Which is why I'm releasing it for critique, one section at a time, hopefully to get some constructive criticism about it. But it is not easy. This is a very difficult process to force yourself to undertake, especially if you're used to and accustomed to doing things the wrong. Well, I won't want to say the wrong way, but the less effective way. So it takes time. It takes time. It is difficult, but it is absolutely worthwhile doing.
That first person exercise sounds like it would be really helpful. I never thought of it that way. The way I've always heard it is that you should imagine like a camera just over that one person's shoulder. Like only what that camera can see is what can be seen in the, or as if you're looking, I guess if we're going to go in deeper point of view, looking through that one character's eyes. Something that kind of jumped out at me, and I just want to say, Jahagi knows that I love her stuff. She is so much fun and so clever and creative. There was something that stood out to me, and I thought it was worthwhile bringing up as sort of an overall discussion here for editing. There were two things in the beginning that made me go, and that's something that when I'm listening to or reading a book, like little things like that will trip me up. And I think Rhonda calls them little nits, very little nits. And the first one was the toothbrush vibrating a little after it was clicked on and off. I felt like in the universe that she created in the story, it would be an entirely yes or no thing. Like either it would work or it would not, because it didn't recognize Kai. And then the second one is even sillier, but he brushes his teeth with his fingers, and I'm thinking, but he has a toothbrush right there. Like even if it doesn't vibrate, isn't it a little better than a finger?
Actually, you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that, because the toothbrush thing, as far as with the finger, that kind of, it's like, huh? I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I assumed and moved on, but that did kind of have me scratch my head a little bit.
Yeah,
So
but with every little appliance and the door and everything had a little bit of personality.
Yeah. In a broader perspective, though, I think that when we write and we go back and self-edit, it's important to look and see if what we've got is consistent within the world we've created. And that was just like the little vibration thing didn't seem consistent to the technological advancements as they were. You know, the fingerprints weren't recognized, his face wasn't recognized. So and that's something that we have to do, like in all of our own writing, because you are creating an entirely fictional environment, really, for people to immerse themselves in.
So other things having its own little tiny piece of personality, like the front door, you know, that was just programming, and the toothbrush was more. It shouldn't have worked because the thing didn't have power.
Well,
so
like,
I guess
the toilet didn't like flap up and down at him or open a little bit and then like, no, I'm not going to let you sit on here.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And actually, the door kind of got me, as I thought, well, I could see a door opening and letting him out and then never letting him back in because it didn't recognize him. But I thought that would be a really strange thing for a company to do, to leave your door open so that anyone could come in and trash that apartment that the company must own in some way if they operate the door. I don't know, just things like that.
I guess I'm kind of hung up on the Flintstones, you know, having to think all that stuff as an animal, you know, that the door would be opened by a pterodactyl or something. That I kind of got that in my head a little bit. That they were given a little bit of personality, each little appliance.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I was eager to get to this part. I loved it that this guy's rejection is so complete. Okay, the story opens with his toothbrush won't work, his door, he tells the door to shut and it won't. So these are appliances that, and this is near future stuff or happening now. You can issue a voice command and the door shuts and the window closes or opens, whatever. And then it refuses to obey him. So it isn't just that he goes to a restaurant to order a sandwich and she says, oh, sorry, your card's been declined. No, his rejection goes all the way down the level to a door that won't shut when he tells it to. To me, that was just one of the most profound and haunting parts of the story.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Go ahead, Jason. I
was going to say, I thought it would. I kind of agree that the personalization of the inanimate objects kind of, like, if that was removed, it may have even made the whole story more impactful, because it kind of added a bit of cuteness to it that I don't know if it detracted it a little bit, but to me that would have made it, like, taken it up a little level and made it more impactful.
I am sorry I didn't get to hear anything that you said. I'll listen to it on playback. I had to log out and log back in because once again I couldn't hear the speaker. But anyway, the thought for me, it would be such a simple fix as an editor. What I would recommend on the toothbrush is just have the bristles retract. And that way he still has to use his finger if there are no bristles.
Ooh, yeah, that is an excellent solution to that.
Yeah. And people are wondering why we nitpick this. Well, guys, let me tell you, this is what makes good fiction. This is what makes your stories the kind of stories that people want to pick up and read, and they read all night long, and they can't put the book down because nothing is stopping them. Nothing distracts them and pulls their attention away from the story and makes them realize they're reading a book. So when you get one down to this point and you start nitpicking it, that's when you're putting some really good fiction out there.
I get it. The door should have locked him out and not recognize him at all. The door should have just locked him out, not let itself open. So like you said, like any stranger can come in, but just locked him out. You don't exist.
Yeah.
Right. And your suggestion, Rhonda, is exactly about, I mean, just that little bit of a change would make it, like that kind of consistency where you don't stop and say, wait a minute.
Exactly. That's right. So, the thing with Steemit, it's a double-edged sword because we have 7 days when we put something up. So we review things in the workshop well before they're published, because the editing process, you don't write it one day and post it the next, and you could not reasonably expect that you have quality material. You're going to have some editing issues in that, and that's what keeps a lot of people from getting curated by the SFT. Is not we love the story, but there are editing issues. If they bring it into the workshop, we can fix it. We can fix that and make it. But what gets locked down after 7 days is on the blockchain forever. And then you have, if we curated it and put it in the library, and you have publishers and agents scouting our library for authors to approach. Wow, we want it to be, we don't want to give them a reason to close the window and walk away. So, we do that, and we nitpick and nitpick and nitpick, and out of it comes some pretty good stuff.
I wholeheartedly agree. All right, I think we've covered this one pretty extensively. What else? What's next?
Next is Carol. We have some interview.
Yay! Welcome, Carol.
Yeah, kind of what we've been waiting for. No. We're all really excited about it, because Carol is one of the most interesting people that I have ever known.
She really is.
Yeah, and she has this knee-jerk fear. She'll start typing these random facts in the thing, and then she's like, oh no, I'm boring everybody to death, or they don't want to hear it. But she doesn't understand. We just kind of stop what we're doing and just wait to see what she says next, because it's interesting. I mean, this stuff is interesting to writers. And I've learned a lot from her. I've learned most of what I know from her. And she has this long background in writing and in publishing, and she comes with a pedigree that most of us in the group don't have. And anything you come up with, she can go back to some piece of classic literature and give you a counterpart for that. And I think that is incredible. I think that is just magnificent. So we are so blessed and fortunate to have her as part of this fiction workshop. And I hope that as time goes by, she'll be a resource for all of Steemit as well. So anyway, everyone give a nice welcome for Carol Kean.
Hey, Carol.
Hi, welcome.
Grumble, grumble.
Rubble.
Rhonda cannot be trusted. Rhonda's just too kind. So
no, she's not. No, she is not. Every word of that was 100% true.
I have a degree in English teaching, but I never taught. There were no job openings. And then I worked as a technical writer in a bomb factory. And a tech writer, again, really was a general scapegoat for Collins Radio Company. And then I just stayed home with kids for years. I started a novel, and it took me 10 years to finish it. Historical novel, because now, 30 years have passed since the early 1990s. But anyway,
God, it is.
So I make up for it. I'm sorry, what?
I was just saying, my God, it is. It doesn't feel like it, but man, is it ever. Go on.
I'm
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Carol.
Oh, no, go right ahead, because there were no cell phones yet. And after I looked at the novel and thought, this is no longer a contemporary novel. This is the penalty. And then at one time there was a movie out that supposedly was about a woman flying at the Reno air races. But for some reason, the movie never made it into the theaters. And I thought, that's because there is a God. My heroine who flies in the Reno air races is going to come first. I have never found out more about this movie, but I've always been curious. But there's definitely a penalty. I see more people saying, oh, yes, like Emily Dickinson, I've got a manuscript and it's sitting in my drawer collecting dust, but I'm afraid to share it with the world because I know it'll be laughed at or rejected or ignored. So I know that feeling.
I have read Carol's writing, and it is sublime. I mean, it's very literary, and it's on par with some of the best in the industry. So, when I have ignored her advice a time or two. I will give you that. But 99% of the time, you ignore Carol at your own risk, because when she sees something, she has a sense for words and a sense for characters and a sense for pacing and a sense for things, especially when she's reading it, in front of her, someone else's work. Very hard to argue with it. I've really never seen her make a wrong suggestion. So
when she's reading someone else's work, there you go. When it comes to my own work, I'm blind as that bat in the cave. everything that sounds good to me is not as good to anybody else. A lot of the flaws you were talking about earlier, things like omniscient going out of style, head hopping, and there's another long list of things too that used to be so common, and we'd see this all the time. And it's hard to see it in your own writing, but when you see it in somebody else's, and this is the beauty of the fiction workshop, it's like, oh, that's what I do. And so you find yourself criticizing the same thing in somebody else. And then you realize, oh, the reason it's so easy for me to spot is because I do it too. I just can't see it when I do it. Just like we don't see our own typos.
That is true. That is absolute truth. And I mean, I don't really know anyone that doesn't apply to. I've never met a writer, Carol, that is not to some degree blind to their own problems and issues in their work. I've not.
I guess it's like with our children too, you know, and then as we age, we become even more blind. You know, it's like your children might drive you crazy, but then they become parents of your grandchildren, and it's like, oh, my children, no, I never had to spank Tim, says his mother, and I'm thinking, you kids never did that. Our kids are doing it now, so.
I like Carol because she will pick out lovely prose, and even if it's telly, she will defend it to the death. I love that.
Oh, no.
I love that about Carol. I really do. And I love the piece that Carol put up in the workshop for us to look over. It was just so full of so many layers and beautifully written. And there were places that I definitely had to stop and read more than once, but I'm not someone who feels that the author should spoon feed everything to his readers. So I would just like to say that I love Carol's writing, and I've just so enjoyed being a part of the workshop with her.
Oh, thank you. And I love yours, Jessica.
Oh.
It's funny
Well,
how in
thank
workshop
you.
we'll be talking in chat, and then you and Rhonda will be typing the same words at the same time, and then it's you and me. You're on this wavelength with everybody else.
That's
Awesome.
synchronicity.
Synchronicity, yeah, you got that going. That's for sure. But defending writers, okay, you reminded me of how I've been singing the praises of Guy T. Martland, the science fiction writer who lives in the UK. And what you said about having to stop and reread. The first time I ever tried to get through the science, I had to set it down and come back to it, and set it down and come back to it. I don't know how many times, but then once I got familiar with all the names and all these new terms and settings, I just got so hooked. I could be completely immersed in this world to the point that it's like you open your eyes up from the book and look around, and it's like, oh, this is the real world. Oh, I don't get to teleport, and I don't get to have guys with tails, the Drathyalons, coming. They're the interventionists who are patrolling the universe to put down conflicts to keep these evil things from destroying everything. And it's like, oh, none of these planet protectors exist, and none of these flying machines do, and none of these Earth colonies. All this technology, this genotech, that they have these genetic things, and a lot of science fiction has this. You know, you get a cut and there's an immediate healing to it, and the lifespan's expanded 150 years. And yet it took me such a long time to get into this novel in the first place. And then once I did, I'm like, everybody has to read this because it's so fantastic. And I forget, they're going to sit down and think, yeah, this is the guy who read the Odyssey at age 5.
My God.
He was educated, yes. He went to Oxford, and not just Oxford, but Cambridge, which is still even more exclusive. More people coming out of Cambridge have won Nobel Prizes than the entire nation of France has produced.
Well, that's not saying much.
You know, this guy is... Oh, thank you. I have enough German blood to be one of those frog haters. And it's like, it's all because the French think they're better than we are, and that makes us mad. And they think their accent's better than ours, and that makes me even madder. And remind me to stop right now. Rhonda, you're supposed to have a flashing red light for when I get derailed, remember?
No, I'm gonna hug you. I'm gonna hug you down, Carol.
No,
hug you down.
It's great. I mean, no, you're not off track.
anything more about the French aside from the fact that, so we're talking about Guy and Cambridge, and this is what makes his prose a little challenging. This is not the walk in the park that Danielle Steele or 50 Shades of Grey or whoever is. This is, you really have to get engaged. It takes all of your attention, but it rewards it so much. There's so much more going on with it. Every character, even a robot, has a personality and a history. And then these layers that you keep peeling back, and it turns out that this robot named Prid goes back 4 generations. And the imagery, I mean, I'm dying to talk to somebody besides myself about this stunning imagery in this novel. But you reminded me, Jessica, when you brought up prose, you have to stop and reread it. And I'll do that. It's but it's like Shakespeare, you know, we read Shakespeare and we have to stop and refer to the footnotes. Guy's vocabulary is so stratospheric. It's like, what would I do without my Kindle? I'd be flipping open the pages of the dictionary, I guess. Like, you have a patent, a passageway patent, P-A-T-E-N-T, patent. What does that mean? And it's open is partly what it means, but it's also because he's a hospital pathologist and knows what it means about resuscitating people who can't breathe. So the vocabulary, the exactly right word getting chosen or seen. And then, of course, I love Guy because he's packing his novels full of science. It's why I love science fiction. I love the science in it. And so many people don't love it like I do, which is why you said I'm, yes, afraid to say things in Fiction Workshop, because like, oh, there she goes again. And I think I'm an Aspie. I'm like that kid who quotes all these facts. And my husband reminded me of that Polar Express movie, the Christmas one, where the nerdy kid with the glasses is constantly going on about how many miles per hour the train can go and how many piles of coal it takes to feed it. And it's like, that's me. That's me. That's why everybody runs away from the room and turns their back and looks at their watch when I start talking, because I care about these.
No, I love it when you come in and you just post, you know, you'll have just like a wall of text about the history of this and connections to that. And maybe you saw something on Steemit that just got your wheels turning, and then you're Googling, and then you're copy pasting. You're wonderful. You're wonderful. Inspirational.
You really are. You're a fantastic person to have in the Fiction Workshop. I mean, you single-handedly emboldened me as an author when I wrote that Don't Stop Me Now, that piece that I sent over to you for consideration for Perihelion. And
oh no, and it didn't get published. Oh my gosh, that was a fantastic piece, and then Sam had his stroke. You write a publishable piece, and Sam has a stroke.
What a jerk, having a stroke.
You know what,
yes,
though?
How dare he?
You know what, though? The fact that you considered it publishable it's impressive. Like, that speaks volumes not only to how I feel about myself, but because I sent that through the Fiction Workshop a number of different times, and a number of different people commented on it, and we did. I mean, it wasn't a very long story. I think it was only like not even
1,000 words.
What?
500 or 1,000?
Yeah,
nice and short.
Yeah, it wasn't long at all. But even for that, I mean, we went through it like 3-4 times, and there were some significant edits made to it. I mean, the content was good, but we went through and we really honed it down, and we made it something incredible. And that's thanks in large part to you.
Oh, no, you're crediting me where it doesn't belong. I'm thinking now the state that Perihelion is in, you should try posting it. It won't, I mean, you pulled it down right away, right? So it's not like you've already posted it.
Yeah, oh yeah. I've got it down.
Make more money this way, probably at Steemit. Perihelion was never about the money. I'd be working for a penny a word. My family was always saying, why do you spend so much time on this? Why don't you go get something that pays? Other editors are charging $30 to $60 an hour for what you do. That's like,
well, yeah, but I mean, I would want to publish through Perihelion because I would publish. I mean, yeah, technically we're all publishing on Steemit, but it's different to have it published in an editorial, in a magazine.
Well, tell us about
Sam.
Well, tell us about
Rhonda, what?
Perihelion. Tell us about that, Carol. Tell us what you do there. Tell us about Sam. Tell us about the magazine, because some people may not know what we're talking about, and this is very interesting. And Sam is a very interesting person.
Oh, Sam. Well, Sam and Eric Jones were classmates at the New School in New York a long time ago, and in 1969, 68, it was 2 years, they created a student magazine together, and they published it on the old-fashioned mimeograph machine, so they had paper copies only. It first was called Selden's Scene, and that was a play on a Isaac Asimov character. And they got Dean Koontz, who was a student there, to submit a story. They were the first people to ever publish Dean Koontz. And they would interview Isaac Asimov and everybody from that era over the telephone. And so they would publish interviews that, as students, big names like Asimov and Joseph Green and all of the people known as Joseph Campbell's stable. He had found these writers. Joseph Campbell launched the careers of a lot of science fiction's golden agers. So then college ended, and it's expensive to produce a magazine. Sam and Eric didn't have the money to keep doing it. Sam went to Manhattan, where he edited different magazines. He puzzles that you saw in the New York Times, if you did them back in the day. He also created books full of cryptograms. Sam is so brilliant. He's kind of like Guy T. Martland, who read the Odyssey at age 5. Sam was bored in the classroom because everything is too easy. And the teachers thought he was an idiot because he was paying no attention. You know that routine. So anyway, after their long careers, Eric Jones ended up at NASA, physicist, whatever he is. And then Sam said, after he retired in his Manhattan career and moved back to Rochester, New York, Eric, we should get that magazine going again. And instead of doing paper, they did it online, the e-zine, however you say it.
E-zine.
And so he'd hire professional artists to do a new cover every month. He'd pay these writers to come up with the short stories and do the layout, and everything looked good, looked professional, and it was going for a few years. And I was writing these book reviews, and he was saying, give it time. It takes a good solid 6 years for a magazine, a new one, to launch and get off the ground. But then last fall, he was rushed to the ER. He has arthritis, and one of his knee joints got infected with a staph germ, and he almost died because the infection could have gone to his heart. And so after all that, he comes back home. We only lost the November issue. December, he was right back in the game again, and he published Rhonda's story called Space Horses. And that December issue had some of the best fiction of any of those issues of Perihelion ever. And fine until April or March, and then this time it was the stroke. Recovery, the physical rehabilitation, and on top of it all, he comes home and the electricity, his house, he lost all of his appliances, he lost his computer, he lost the layout of Perihelion, he had to buy expensive new software, which he says almost bankrupted him, and he couldn't get it to work. And then he's publishing Perihelion now in PDF format, which means a paper copy format, and it's online, but it's not as accessible as it used to be. And so the August issue finally went live after having May, June, and July just vanish into a black hole. And I'm hoping that everything comes back together again. But in the meantime, I've moved on to Steemit and gotten really busy here.
Yes, you have.
I met a lot of authors because of Perihelion. I would interview them. I would write essays. I would do so many book reviews. And I got to know several dozen. One is Guy Martland, one of them Nick Cole. I interviewed him, and he also, Nick did those fiction prompts. Sam came up with a story prompt about the end of the world, and so Nick submitted one of those. There's a lot of fun stuff, a lot of fun authors, really intelligent, fun people, and Sam's always been upbeat, cheerful, witty, and he's got humility. The greater the talent the person seems to be, almost without fail. The more pompous somebody is, the more likely they are not to be as talented.
I think that's true, coming of how you were talking about yourself earlier.
No, I'm just being honest here.
I agree with that, and that's what I have seen too. Even just you see someone with a lot of self-importance, and then you read what they wrote, and it's like, ooh, But yet someone will come along, and they're just this normal person, and you chitter chat with them, and they're just average, and then you read them, and they've written an opus, and it's like, what? So it's that's true. I think that people who have a real skill have nothing to prove.
In my job,
Yes.
I've often assumed when there's an error, and we do like legal documentation and things and research, and if there's an error, I always assume the error is mine. And this boss I worked with for like 12 years, he would say, you never make an error. Why do you always think it's your error? I said, that's why I never make an error, because I always assume it's going to be mine. So I never go forward assuming that I'm right. And I think that with writing, it has to be that way as well. You have to be really open to the idea that, you may be blinded to what your own writing appears like to other people.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that's really the difference between what I would argue is a good writer and a great writer. And I've had the opportunity to know, a really absolutely fantastic author who I'm going to try and get on the show a little ways down the road. I am a co-host on another podcast for something else. It's not writing, but we've had him on before, and we've had him on Discord, so I know it'll work. But he told me this, and this belief and this sort of mode of thinking has only been reinforced the longer that I've been hanging around you guys and been in the Fiction Workshop and been around like really fantastic authors and editors. A good writer writes for him or herself. Like, they write what they want to write, how they want to write it, because they want to write it. They want to get it out. A great writer writes content that other people want to read.
Amen. You hit the nail on the head. That is the most undervalued, overlooked, unappreciated fact of writing, that you can have. I mean, it sums up so much. And I actually touched on this in the article that I just posted on Steemit. There are reasons to write when you are considering yourself. You can write things. Nobody is telling people don't write unless you're writing for a commercial audience. That's not what we're saying. There are people who write for the sake of writing, and they never have any aspirations, to publish or anything like that. And there is nothing wrong with that. Writing exercises the brain in ways that few things do other than, writing. We'd love to see everybody write. But then you have a subset of writers who very much want to write for an audience. And that's what the Fiction Workshop focuses on. We're not into doodling and hobbying and journaling. And even though we may do some of that ourselves, that's not why we're there, is to help you write a better diary. I mean, we are there to try to help people who want to write for the Steemit audience, who want to write fiction for the Steemit audience, according to accepted mainstream standards, publishing standards, so that we can attract that mainstream publishing audience to Steemit. If we are writing for Steemit just because we want to write and we feel we can self-publish anything, we're missing the opportunity to draw in the crowd. And so that's what we at the Fiction Workshop are trying to do, is teach people to write for the audience that Andrei was talking about. Write for the audience, write stuff that people want to read in a way that they can read it and understand it and relate to it and identify with it, so that we can start bringing the mainstream traffic here.
Yeah. And it's like Rhonda said, you can have a great idea. It's not to say that you can't have a great idea and you can't write it for yourself. They're not mutually exclusive. But the mark of a great author is they'll take an idea that they have, an idea that they feel is interesting, and they will transform it into a story that people want to read, that is tailored to the audience, not to the writer. And there is a difference.
There's kind of this mythos about, artists that like, well, you should never sell out. I mean, this idea that people like Rembrandt or Monet were just, painting for themselves, and they were, so dedicated to their art, or Michelangelo, or the previous century. I mean, they all wanted to sell. They wanted to sell their stuff. Rembrandt had an assembly line with his students pumping out his paintings on his behalf. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to be able to sell. And in writing, it can be an awesome collaboration between the author and what their vision is, and the creation of that accessibility and desire in their readers to know more about it.
Yes, I love the painter analogy. That is, you nailed it. I mean, that's it. See, just a little aside before I finish a different thought, is that this is why I think the fiction workshop is working, because our minds are thinking alike. We've got that mind meld thing going on. We get it, and there are some people who come in who don't, and that's fine. They go on to find success in other ventures, but most of us who are there, we understand this. And I will see a piece of writing, and this is no joke. I can see a piece of writing, and I can tell within about 50 to 100 words if the author is an asshole. Because all that's what's in that piece of writing it's all of his ego. And you'll see his voice slipping in, and you'll see everything is painted through the lens of that author. And it's his voice that keeps me from seeing the rest of the story. And usually when you meet that person, they're not a very warm and giving person. They're very full of self-importance, because they think the whole world wants to hear their voice. And that's where they go wrong. Nobody wants to hear the author. Nobody wants to know about the author. They want to know about the author's characters and the world that lives in their head.
Yeah, sorry about
While we're talking about, I have to bring up Rebecca. She's got all this humility and all this talent, and she was really bummed out because what she thinks is her best piece gets ignored, and what she thinks is her worst piece wins the contest. And it was awesome. I mean, a few hours before deadline, she found out about the contest and thought, oh, I'm going to do something. In about 3 hours, she whips out this story about a little librarian who's a troll for somebody else's fictional world, and it's a contest winner. Or else it was, second place. And the other one, Misty Vale, from 2 words, Misty and Vale. I think that one was the big prize winner. Either way, she won 2 contests in a row. Somebody who had not written in years. And we all thank Steemit for the inspiration for waking up those sleeping volcanoes, writers who had shut down for whatever reasons. And then suddenly it stirs them to life, being at Steemit and having ideas and writing prompts. But anyway, the issue here is that writers think that our best stuff, what we think is our best stuff, isn't. Like Mark Twain wrote Joan of Arc. Anybody remembers reading Joan of Arc by Mark Twain? Why does he think it was his best work and nobody remembers it today? It's kind of a mystery. And the flip side of that is Tchaikovsky. Can you name any musical piece written by Tchaikovsky besides The Nutcracker? That would have been your first thing to spring to mind, right? Dun, 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 the Christmassy Nutcracker. He hated it. He was embarrassed that everybody kept playing it. He thought it was his worst, most commercial, most superficial, trite composition. And 200 or some more years later, we're still doing the Nutcracker every year at Christmas.
Every Christmas.
Yes. And so now, to be fair, my musical children listen to it and say, well, he's right. Nutcracker isn't his best composition by any stretch. Obviously, the one that was his favorite is his best. This Pathétique, which I can't even pronounce, his last thing, the dark, dying piece. But the point being, who can explain what captures the imagination? Why? There's this little girl named Clara who falls asleep on Christmas Eve, and her Nutcracker wooden toy comes to life and battles the mice and sweeps her off into this land where there's dancing fairies, the sugar plums, and the Russian dancers. And it's so beautiful. And then she wakes up in the end and it's all over. Which, by the way, as writers, we're not supposed to do. Never have them wake up and find out this whole thing was just a dream. Wizard of Oz does that too, to an extent. It's a common trope. But the point being,
Boo.
what we think is our best, most important work is all too often not.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
Well, that's ruined the ending of my next story.
Oh, we're going to have somebody wake up from a dream?
It's okay. Have them wake up from the dream in the beginning.
Oh, you never start a novel with somebody waking up.
All right, then make your main character an animal.
I'm gonna get Conrath in here and have what is what's his name? J.A. Conrath? Is that
Jack Kilborn, J.A. Conrath? Rhonda, if you bring him onto this show, I will melt. Holy cow. I love him.
I don't think I can get him here, but his article about how not to start a story may be one of the best articles that I have read in my life. And the comments are even funnier than the article. I love the one with the guy who says that he read so many bad stories that he jumped out the office window. But he survived the fall because he landed on all of the manuscripts that he'd thrown out because they were no good. So anyway, and that kind of brings me around. I got another question for Carol. And, there's a lot of things. I just feel like I need to reiterate this point. We are focusing on commercial writing. We are focusing on publishable work. It's just like, poetry is not our thing. It doesn't mean that we don't appreciate poetry. I can't critique a poem. I don't even know what I'm reading. I don't know the meters and the rhythm and I would make a total hash out of a poem because I'm not a poet myself. How am I going to evaluate that? And the same thing is with some other types of writing, stream of consciousness writing and that sort of thing. We can't help that. There's nothing we can contribute. We are focusing on commercial writing. And so this brings me back around. I had a list of questions for Carol. And one of them was, have you ever queried agents? And tell us how easy it is to get an agent interested in a new manuscript by a new author. How do you just walk up to them and say, can I have 30 minutes of your time?
Not me. I don't do writing conferences. You're supposed to have an elevator pitch ready in which when somebody says, what's your book about? In 30 seconds, you can sum it up for them. Woman pilot races a custom-built airplane at Reno, finds out that her nemesis, the guy in that custom black P-51 Mustang, might in fact be the brother who was supposed to be shot down in Vietnam. That kind of distracts her and takes the race down a few notches, but that doesn't even come close to describing what the novel's about. So I hate the elevator pitch. I queried one agent, Nathan Branford, or whatever the name was, and you just get the one little rejection. Sorry, not interested. And I just don't do it. It's like, okay, I'll just be an indie author instead. But the trouble is being an indie author is I'd have to master formatting and techno glitches. And my story began on a computer that I bought in 1990. And we upgraded it to another computer. We backed it up on floppy disks. Big floppy disks, and then we backed it up onto 4-inch square disks, and then we started backing stuff up to a CD, and now we've got a hard drive where for a few bucks you can get so many gigabytes of memory, and this is like 10 computers. That's how old this novel got. And so there's formatting glitches that go all the way back when I had a dot matrix printer. How do you purge your novel of stuff like that? Retype it by hand? So yeah, formatting terrifies me. But then, hey, getting on the radio and getting my microphone to work terrifies me too. It turns out I wasn't in streaming mode. Rhonda didn't tell me about that part. And I rely on Rhonda for everything. It was UniWisp who nailed me on that. Well, check and see if you're in streaming mode. It's like, where? In settings. Oh, so.
Hey, we got a question. Carol, from the audience that's listening. The question is, what are your thoughts on vanity publishers?
Oh, those con artists, they call me once a week and I hang up on them. One of them a couple of years ago says, so you think you're going to self-publish as an indie? You let me know how that goes. 1 year from now, I expect to call you and find out that you're not only published, but you're selling like hotcakes. And I was like, ha.
I also think it's important to make the distinction. There is a difference between vanity press and self-publishing and independent publishing.
Completely. They're barracudas. They're preying upon people, getting a few $1,000s out of them, and they're going to edit and format your book and publish it. And they're going to give you a box of 100 or so many paper copies, which, this guy in our church keeps a trunk of these in his car, and everybody he sees, oh yeah, I wrote a book. It's about how my dad was in World War II, and he told my mom, I will come home again. If they tell you I'm dead, don't believe it. And it came true. It worked out just like that. So he's got this whole entire book. And if you dare say, oh, that sounds good. Oh, right here. And he unlocks the trunk of his car and pulls out, here, it's only $16, and he pushes it on you. This is why vanity presses and self-published authors got such a bad name.
Yeah, we have several of those in the town where I live in, and they're at all the fairs, and they're always hawking their works, and the books are horrible. I mean, they're so full of typos and just basically incomprehensible. You don't even know what they're talking about. And it's vanity press, and they pay the publisher. That's what a vanity press is when you pay instead of the publisher paying you.
Yes.
You pay the publisher to do whatever mess they're going to make of your book. And so vanity press is there. It's never there. I've never, ever in all of my years seen any success come from vanity press.
Nor have I. It may be possible that something did once. I just haven't heard of it. And they say with indie authors going through the Amazon or the Crate space, you too can spend a couple thousand on editing and artwork. It can take a couple $1,000s or more to publish your own book, but I think most people go the Fiction Workshop route or have their friends do the proofreading and then go to Shutterstock, Pixabay, whatever it is, which maybe shows, but you don't have to have that much money. Like you, Rhonda, published 2 books. I don't believe it cost you $2,000 a piece to do it, right? You wouldn't have done it, right?
It didn't cost me a dime. I didn't spend 1 red cent on cover art, on formatting, on editing, publishing, or anything. I didn't spend anything. That's not to say I didn't get it done. I mean, Carol, as well as I do that both of my books are some of the best edited self-published books out there. And a lot of that's in part, due in part to you. But
no.
No. But I mean, they're of a quality that, and I've had some success with them. And the reviews, when you go to Amazon, you see the reviews. It is possible. You look at Nick Cole's books on Amazon. You look at the one he self-published. I mean, people are buying these things, and they're not getting dinged in the reviews. So, and then we also have to consider that there's different levels of success. You don't tell if you're querying agents like I am with Highkill or was. There's an agent with it now. I don't know what he's going to do with it, but he has it. But in the querying process with agents, I've got more than 50 rejections in a month.
You?
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. Nobody wanted to even look at that novel. And it was just based off the query letter. It's not like anybody got the novel and was reading it. You can't even get them to read your query letters. So finally, this one guy did, and he took time to read it. He read the synopsis, he read the first 3 chapters, and he requested the full. So he has it. But you don't even tell them that you have self-published. Because when they see that you have self-published or you list a vanity press, you're in the trash can. And they say the only exception to that is if you have self-published a book and sold over 100,000 copies at $2.99 or more. And it's like right now, Nick Cole's got publishers calling him. They are beating his door down, he said in one of the articles that I read, because he has sold a ton of books. Well, yeah, they want to talk to him now because he's going to make them money. And that's what it comes down to with publishing. It's not even about whether they love you. It's how much money you're going to make them. And, they just shy away from the self-published market. This may change in the future, and we hope to help change that with Steemit. That's one of the things that we want to do. But right now, like it or not, that's the way it is.
Conrath self-published initially. He actually turned down a top 5 offer and carried on with self-publishing. But I remember when I started reading him, I got into him because like him and a group of other people in his writing critique circle or something, they would put, you know, good stories on Kindle for like free, and then like 99 or $1.99 novels. And they were just fantastic, but they were so badly edited. Like I loved them so much that I wanted to write and be like, I will proofread your novel. Please, please let me fix this before you put another one out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, yeah, I can see that.
But they made it. I think that we are moving more toward an acceptability. It's hard. It's like I don't know, it's a double bladed sword, I guess, because on the one hand, anyone can get it out there, right? Like Nick Cole wasn't stopped by the bias of that publisher from getting a good work out there. And I mean, I found about 5 authors connected to Conrath that are all fantastic. One of them's Blake Crouch, who recently had Wayward Pines was made into a Fox miniseries with big name actors, and he's got another thing in the works. But you know, they all started out, you know, self-publishing. But on the other hand, anybody can do it. So sometimes it's very hard to wade through the crap.
Yeah, this is true. This is very, very true. And I think that's my friend Rand Eastwood. He self-published, and his book is excellent. It's a collection of short stories, and I think he's an absolutely fantastic author. Which at some point I'm going to have to send one of you my copy of his book, or just buy another copy and send it to you guys. That's actually probably what I'll do, just to help support him a little bit. But yeah, he self-published and he got very little traction, and I think part of the reason is because anybody can self-publish. And I mean, if you look at his book, if you actually look at his paperback, it's very well done. I mean, he had an eye, and again, this is where I got that philosophy that we all share, that you write for the audience. And he has an eye for making his presentation look good. He does. And it just got lost in the weeds.
A small press is another good resource. A lot of them are really passionate, and they will do a good job with your book, but they can't get the book into the big stores, and they just can't promote it enough to get as many readers as what the Big Six does. I know of so many authors who've published really good books with a small press, which is not a vanity press. And I know one, Carol Fix is a publisher. She owns Lilacat Books. She said she's not making any money, and it's hard for her authors to even make money. Ken Lizzie is an author who was a different small press, and I love this guy's stuff. But where's the big name recognition? So you can have the small publisher, and there's a big whole market out there and a community and people loyal to them. And then if you're in the indie author crowd, there's also the anthology gang. Samuel Peralta, guy, he's got a PhD in engineering, and he also writes fiction, and he has like a dozen authors per anthology. He's now on like anthology number 12 or 14 of the Futures Chronicles. Michael Bunker was one, and Rhonda, the Tales of the Apocalypse gang, a lot of those writers are in there. And these people are seeing big sales on Amazon. On release day of the next anthology, he'll have record-breaking or top of the charts for his category sales. For these indie authors to team up. You know, John Monk, a guy who is an indie author who wrote this novel called Kick, which you and I both have loved. And he decided to pick his favorite indies, and he had at the time maybe 3 of them. And he did this blog for the awesome indie authors in which he was trying to bring attention to them so that other people would read and love them too. And then it expanded, and now you and I are in this same awesome indies group, but under a different name. I think we have we have a dozen members there now. But it's the indies support each other, and it's like what's happening here at Steemit. Instead of cutthroat competition, helping each other make their books better. Go to the best authors like Joe Ide, who wrote IQ. Guy Martland, for one. They're really good authors. You go to their Twitter or Facebook page, and it's not full of umpteen references to their book, please buy my book. It's everybody else. They promote other authors. The more you promote the other authors, the more of a sign it is you're confident in your own work. You're not worried about competition. You know, the more books people read, the better.
Yeah, that's true.
That is great.
And that's actually, we're getting close to time, and we still have a Mad Cow winner to announce. So I'm going to say this, and then we'll wrap it up. You know, give it over to Carol to announce her Mad Cow winner. But anyway, the thing that we're doing here at Steemit, or that we want to do and that we're working toward, is to do something on the publishing side. We do want to have an imprint, a publishing house, where we can offer things through crypto backing that most small presses cannot, because that's what Carol was saying. You can go on a small press and they can help you with some of the editing and some of the formatting, but they can't do the promotions. And that's what it's about. If you want to sell books and your book is good enough, you will, you know, it's going to get lost in the weeds, just like Andrei was saying. It just gets lost. There are so many, you're competing against so many self-published authors, there's no visibility. So then you pay $700 for BookBub to run you for one day, an ad, and you may get 50,000 downloads from an ebook that day. You know, so it pays for itself usually. If your book is not good, those 50,000 downloads are going to come back to bite you, because you're going to get probably about 5,000 one-star ratings on Amazon. And I know somebody this happened to. So it can bite you. But if your book is good and you get it out there on BookBub, then it starts gaining steam, and then you're doing okay. Most people, most indie authors cannot pay $700 for one day of advertising. Most indie authors cannot pay NetGalley to send out the ARCs to get the pre-release reviews. We're talking thousands of dollars, thousands. And small press can't do it either. But with Steemit, with the crypto backing, you know, being able to get the steam behind it, you know, if we're able to start building up an account and building up the money, we may be able to, maybe in a year's time, put 4 or 5 authors out there, get them on BookBub, get them in NetGalley, get all of the stuff done that a major house can do, get them a ISBN number that can get into the bookstores. So that's where we're going, and that's what we're thinking, and that's why we're geared toward, you know, commercial mainstream publishing, is because we want to help Steemit authors compete in the mainstream. So that's the goal with the Fiction Workshop. That's the goal of SFT. That's the goal of a lot of the little projects that we have going, because I would really love to see some of our people get a book out there.
And our hope is that when those agents scanning the internet for the big 6 or the top 5 or whatever, when they finally come to Steemit, we will have something better to offer than E.L. James.
There you go.
All right, Carol, I believe we have you for your Mad Cow, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, before I get to that, real quick, Rhonda was talking about small presses. Guy's first novel was published by a press in Germany, which wasn't a huge press, and it folded. The book is out of print. I guess rights revert back to him. My goal is to see it get republished as part of a trilogy. I just read book 2 of that trilogy, and he's working on book 3 now. It'd be awesome to see it go through Steemit. But everybody wants to hear about the contest. I want to say that all these entries are great, and one cool thing about it is that Bex, bless her, offered to critique them. Unbeknownst to me, I was not allowed, and Rhonda was also judging, and Bex was judging. So this isn't just me making this decision here, but it's really cool. Like the winning entry, it says Bex and Christoph helped. He said this particular entry was written hastily and with the awesome prodding and some last-minute line editing, you know, by these Steemit members. Big thanks to them. And and one thing I have to say, I love it because the guy uses the word Scheherazade and he spells it right. I can never spell that word right on the first try. Now all of you out there who are watching know who it is, because it's Mad Cow meets Scheherazade. by. He goes by
Scheherazade.
Thinking Zombie.
Hey, congratulations, Andrew.
All right.
Andrew, are you here?
Yeah, well done.
He was here earlier.
He's listening in. He was listening in, but I think his mic.
Andrew, okay, I didn't see your name on the list here. And it's tough. I mean, I tell you what, Andrew, you do have competition. Guy Marland, everybody knows he's like my favorite living author besides Rhonda. How many others? But oh my gosh, Guy submitted the one. And he gets honorable mention at least for the cleverness of turning his mad cow, his heifer, boss, lady, or coworker into that's organic. You know, so it's sentient, it's organic. Oh, it's a delight. I absolutely love it.
There were some strong entries, and I mean, there were entries. We read one on here, I think last show or whatever. There were just some really, really strong entries. I think Jazzy Jess had one that was just really just hysterically funny.
And I love it that she took the ancient mythology behind the heifer. I can't get the names out right now. That window.
I mean,
that's okay.
Jessica, you know their names.
But anyway, we thank you for doing that contest, and
you helped me format it. I formatted
so
most of it.
fun.
You took it out of my hands and reformatted it. God bless you, you know, and you and Bex helped to judge it too.
Okay,
Andrew,
well,
yours is hilarious. Andrew, we love it. It's just clever.
His is the one with the purse that got dumped, right? With the big purple thing in it.
Which wasn't my favorite part, actually. My favorite part was just how it began, with my feet dangling over the fire. You know, he loves barbecue, but not when he's the main course. And then just the badassery commentary. It's like guy humor. Young guys who write for Wired magazine, the way I can never write, but would love to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Andrei, you want to take us out?
Yeah, certainly. So this has been an absolutely fantastic episode. I've been extremely happy with the way this went. You guys have been fantastic, and as always, it's always a pleasure to be here. Real quick before we go, I just want to mention that we have a couple of people supporting us. Me specifically, I'm a witness. So I don't. If you guys are obviously familiar with Steemit because we're on here, but witnesses help support the network and we help make everything happen. So if you would like to cast a vote for me, I would certainly appreciate it, and I would love to pass that forward in helping support Fiction Workshop. But as always, it was a great show, and I did hit the recording button this time, so we will have it as a post later on once I get it cleaned up and I get everything squared away. But I just want to say that this has been MSP Wave Radio, and this is the Fictioneers Show. You can catch it at 10 p.m. UTC every week. We do our show Tuesdays. It's 2 hours long, and can't wait to have another episode. We'll see you guys again next week.
Woohoo!
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening.
Guys.